Hello and welcome to Trinity Laban Conservatoire of Music and Dance and the annual Daryl Runswick Composition Prize. My name is Dominic Murcott and I'm Head of Composition. Each year we choose an adjudicator who is an eminent composer, but this year we thought it would be interesting if we could choose an adjudicator who represents the view of the audience, someone who can act as an informed listener. It would need to be someone who is smart, charming, funny, perhaps someone like Stephen Fry, we thought. So we tried to find someone like Stephen Fry, and of course there is no one like Stephen Fry. So I'm delighted to say that this year's adjudicator is the man himself, Stephen Fry. Hello Stephen, are you there?
Hello Dominic, hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and a great honour to be a part of this composition competition.
Well, thank you so much. I know that I'm delighted, students and staff, we're all delighted to have you here. So what we're going to do, we know that you've listened to the pieces and we know that you've got some comments to say about them. And, I hope you have a winner. One of the things that I should just add, which while there wasn't a fixed theme about this, we did tell the students, it's a COVID issue, we told the students that the ensemble that they're writing for, which is approximately 16 players, had to be distanced. Now, I told you that there was no theme, but what I've discovered today from talking to the students, that a lot of them have actually taken the idea of distance into their music.
Interesting.
I don't know if this will change your view of anything. But I don't know. Do you want to say anything before we start?
No, I'll make the point probably more than once, and because it's worth repeating that, and it's fairly obvious, I should imagine, and will become even more obvious, that I'm not a professional musician. I'm not a composer. I have no skill at composition, but I am a lover of music, and I do attend a lot of concerts, a lot of performances and recitals, and I've sort of joined in as a narrator in all kinds of events with orchestras, and I have friends who are composers, so I you must bear in mind that this comes just from the ears of a keen amateur, but that obviously only one person can win out of the seven. The other six will be able to console themselves with the fact that they weren't chosen by an idiot who knew nothing.
Well, I like to think of you as an informed listener.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so let's go to our first composer.
Hello, my name's Georgia Barnes and I've written the piece Architecture. Architecture was about my trip through London during the pandemic. I was completely fascinated to see all of these buildings completely isolated without people. It was a magical experience to be able to walk around and see them without tourists, and it made me realise that the buildings were only important because people make them important. On their own, they were culturally isolated and historically isolated. However, my walk through London joined these buildings together, and it was a wonderful experience to see history and culture and society tied by just this one walk. So I really like the element of surprise in the music. So I tried to have this harp that did a movement between 1 and 5, and it was to kind of represent footsteps and like my journey. However, occasionally these footsteps are interrupted with kind of random atonal sections, which I think adds, to this element of surprise. I also kind of like the different combination of styles I've used within the piece. I think it adds to that whole sense of historical architecture being so different, and that's what I hope to represent using these features.
So, thank you very much. That was the piece by George Barnes. Stephen, do you have some comments for us?
Yes, I really enjoyed this piece. It was very atmospheric. I loved the sort of journey it made. New sounds coming in, a wonderful use of silence as well. Very good pauses, which I think is a very exciting part of music. When the like spaces in paintings, it's a very important part of the overall rhythm of a piece, as opposed to its tempo. And there was a building restless sense of inquiry, is the note I made. And some lovely colour and texture, which is what you look for, especially in a small piece. And naturally, she and the others have tried to, I won't say show off, but try to exhibit what they can do with orchestration. And I thought it worked as a very good compositional etude, if you like. And it had little pockets of richness that just kept the ear perking up, and it gained in rhythmic complexity, and there were little hints of dance towards the end, I felt. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Stephen. And I should just say that all these pieces, somewhere below us on YouTube, I don't know where it's going to end up, there will be a link that you can go and listen to the full piece as well. So we're just giving you extracts now. So now let's hear from our second composer.
My name is Martha Clayton, and the piece is called The Dance from Here to There. It's supposed to sound like a funeral procession and a wedding party coming over the hill, and the kind of confusing sound that creates. It's inspired by the Charles Ives piece Country Band March, which has a similar sort of idea of two bands practicing at the same time. I really wanted the piece to be fun for the listeners and for the performers. I just wanted this big, raucous sound that isn't too worried about the details necessarily, but just the sound of two ensembles playing at the same time. It to be fun. I think that was my main thing going into it. I wanted the orchestra to have fun, I wanted the listener to have fun. I didn't want them to be too hung up on like note splitting or anything like that. I just wanted the sound of two ensembles properly going for it. And I'm not sure if it in the end did end up capturing that, but that's what I wanted. I feel like it captures a shadow of what I wanted. Yeah.
And that was Martha Clayton's piece. Stephen.
Yeah, this was very interesting. It was, I wouldn't want to say it was comic, but there was something about it that reminded me of a tortoise or an animal just beginning to get some sense of momentum and moving forward, there, lumbering forward almost comically, but with a kind of determination. There was energy and there was charm and there was a tremendous sense of control over all the elements that came together. So it was really, really pleasant listen. And, one of the things I look for, and obviously in such short pieces it's asking a bit much, but is a sense of structure, a sense of story, a sense that it begins and it has somewhere to go. I mean, obviously you don't expect a symphonic or any huge kind of structure, and I felt this had it. I felt that it ended up from a different place where it began, and I was delighted by it.
Lovely, thank you, Stephen. And of course, one of the real tricks for writing a short piece is to keep the material suitable for the size. And when people are starting, they often feel a need to fill it with ideas. And 5 minutes goes by quite quickly for the listener. And we can really only absorb one or two things in that time.
Yes, it's like the Picasso line about, it took me a year to learn how to paint. It took me a lifetime to learn how to paint simply.
Have you ever seen the film of him painting on glass? where you see.
Oh, the ball with the white paint there. That was something, wasn't it? Goodness, I could watch that forever.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Let's move on now to our third composer.
Hi, my name's Emily de Gruchy, and my piece for the Daryl Runswick competition finals is called At the Very Lips of Conception. So the title of the piece is based off a quote by Bill Bryson, who is my father's favourite author. And I'm going to paraphrase it a bit, but it says, "When you take the world on foot, distance becomes different. 1 mile seems fine, 2 miles literally considerable, 10 miles whopping, 50 miles at the very limits of conception." The main premise of it is once a day I would walk from my house to the cliffside, just for the 1 hour of daily allocated exercise, and I would listen to all the birds and the sea rushing up to the cliffside, and it would just be beautiful. And that image has always fascinated me since I was very, very young, and I've been very, very lucky to grow up in a coastal environment, and I wanted to showcase that beauty as part of my piece for the Runswick finals.
That was Emily de Gruchy. Stephen.
Well, that had immense qualities. I mean, so memorable, and it asked the ear to pick it up straight away, and it clearly said, "I've got something to say." I love the almost industrial noises, the scraping and the portamento strings, and what sounded like cats meowing almost at one point in the cymbals. There was a great threatening sense of unrest. And then, there was a little bit of dialogue between the trumpets and then the harp that came in that sort of brought it a bit of peace. Even a bit, I put in my notes as some Wagnerian rummaging in the bass sections, which appealed to me. It was, I would say, controlled and assured, a very assured piece of musical writing, and not something I'll forget easily.
That's great. Thank you very much. So now this is composer number 4.
Hi, my name's Nathen Durasamy, and this is my piece Enantiodromia in loving memory of Dad. The piece tries to convey the experience of an anxiety attack. Enantiodromia is inspired by the writings of Carl Jung, and he talks about how good thoughts can create a subconscious bad thoughts, and how these can manifest themselves and break through the conscious control and manifest themselves as an anxiety attack. Musically, I'm really pleased that I managed to write for a small orchestra. I've always wanted to, and I'm so pleased that I got the opportunity to do so. The latter half, obviously, of the subtitle is for a dedication and homage to my dad, who died in May 2020, so nearly exactly a year today. And I hope you enjoy.
Okay, that was Nathen Durasamy. Over to you, Stephen.
Yes, this was a marvellous piece as well. Lovely dark openings in the cellos and basses. A lot of wonderful texture and colour, built into a terrific harmonically rich mixture, I felt. And maybe this is just because of my own passion, but I heard a bit of deconstructed third act of Tristan in there as well, the beginning of the third act of Tristan, where Tristan lies there and you get the shepherd call and everything. It's just a slight sort of sense of that. This is an odd thing to write about music. I thought it was complex. I thought it was intelligent. There was a lot going on. There was also that sort of Janacek brass sound, which is so beautifully coloured, a lot of rhythmic power, terrific orchestration, generally speaking. And, you know, someone might say there's too much for such a small canvas here, but I thought it fitted really well. I was immensely impressed.
I mean, I should just say for people watching this that we haven't given Stephen any information. All Stephen had was 7 pieces of music with 7 numbers against them. So they don't know any. So Stephen doesn't know any stories behind this. And you know, this was purposeful. We wanted to see how Stephen would respond just to the music without any of the backstory. So it'll be interesting when people get, you know, put together what the composers are saying about their works with what Stephen's saying about it. So I look forward to this all coming together and seeing what people think of it. So now we are up to number 5.
My name is Leo Holder, and my piece is called Exalico, which is the Latin for out of something, because I did Latin at A-level. And it's the idea that you take a piece out of a very thin idea, even out of thin air. My first movement is called Approach, which is describing the approach of this phenomenon or storm, and it has moments of drama, and then the second movement is this big raging storm with strings starting it, and by the end of that movement the piece drops out into horns and trumpets and high strings, which ends the piece. I split up the pitch between the strings, the flute and the oboe, and the bass at the start, because it's very, very, it fits the theme of the distance, because it's very far apart, and it's sort of ominous, almost Holstein.
That was Leo Holder. Over to you, Stephen.
Wonderful opening. It was like a real statement of a subject, and you felt, this is a statement, and it's going to be played with throughout. And it was. I love the busyness of it all. I could hear the clattering of the keys of the oboes and clarinets, or anyway, the reeded instruments, that particular noise they make, which is almost a percussive addition. You might say, well, the microphone isn't supposed to overhear that, but it all helps with the engine of this. It was terrifically driven piece of music. I thought it moved really pleasingly. Great orchestration, and there was a second movement with those wonderful strings, and snare drums and drama, and it grew in excitement. There was a real sense of journey in it, which I loved. Tick tick, I wrote in my initial notes.
Stephen, there is another career for you. If you want to get into composition, I'm sure I'm sure we could squeeze you in for September.
That's very kind of you.
I think you'd probably be quite good at this. Now we have our 6th and penultimate composer.
Hello, my name is Matthis Meyer, and this is my piece Scattering, which is a piece that I wrote with the theme of distance that I tried to express through several musical ideas, one of which was spacing between notes and the harp arpeggios, the other one was the departure from the tonal aspect of music in the strings that suddenly falls out and then comes back in, and the piece starts and slowly degrades, which was also something that I wanted to do with this piece, which was to have something steady and slow that suddenly falls apart. Well, as this was the first time I was working with an orchestral, or at least chamber orchestra instrumentation, there was a lot of things that I was hoping to experiment with and to try out. I was also quite keen on involving some sort of jazz aspects and harmony.
And that was Matthis Meyer, and over to you, Stephen, please.
Oh, yes. This was wonderfully impressive. An attenuated opening, as so many are. I thought to myself, in general, that a lot of the pieces, which is very understandable, I didn't know about this distancing, of course, and I felt, well, if you had to write a piece this short, it's kind of the natural story you tell in music is a metamorphosis. You know, you start with a caterpillar, and it builds and it grows, because that's it's a natural way, and it's a way that leaves the listener happy. I mean, life can sometimes be the opposite. Butterflies can turn into ugly caterpillars. It doesn't always turn into a beautiful transformation. It's not always a burst of positivity. But this had that opening that made me think, I think I know where this is going, which is a lovely feeling. It's like opening the door of a cathedral and knowing there'll be an East End. You know, it died away to silence, and then there was a radiant harp and a terrific simplicity, which belied what came later with these shimmering strings and jazz-like moments of I can't say what the percussive instrument was. Was it a marimba or a glockenspiel? But something in there that was a lovely addition. I mean, it was showing off, but that's, it was a virtuoso piece of writing to some extent, because it did allow one to hear everything that the small resources could offer, and made them sound a lot bigger. So it was a great listen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And so now this is our final of the finalists.
Hello, my name is Franklyn Oliver. The name of the piece is The Children Are Starving. The piece is created using data from the stock market. So I wrote some code that took data from the stock market on the day that we went into the first lockdown, so March 2020. And then I put that through another bit of programming which sort of turned the numbers from the stock market into these musical notes, and then I took the notes and expanded that into the piece you're about to listen to. I was thinking about the theme of distance, and I was thinking about how we use the stock market as a measurement for how well a country's economy is doing, but we don't use how many children are starving, how many homeless people there are as sort of like a realistic thing. And so I was trying to highlight the distance between, like, you know, the stock market and just basic reality, really.
And that was our final composer, Franklyn Oliver.
Whew, this was terrific as well. A great shape to it. Again, something of a sliding caterpillar turning into a marvellous butterfly. A real sense of assured writing here as well. And it has, I wrote it, it has a terrifically welcoming line to it. You know, sometimes listening has to, you know, you have to push your ear in the direction that you feel the music wants to go, which can be very exciting. Sometimes there is a line that the music takes you in, which is a thrilling thing. And I felt this here with this last piece, that there was a great strength of structure that made it a delightful listen and just kind of finished it off. It was wonderfully well considered.
Hello everyone. So Stephen, I'd like you to introduce the composers to you, and composers, please meet Stephen. So I just thought really it would be nice to say hello. So Stephen, do you want to say hello to everyone?
I really do. I want to say hello, and I want to say thank you for giving me enormous pleasure. I've chosen one of your number as winner, but it could have been any of you. I know that's a cliche when it comes to competitions, but I honestly could have tossed a coin. There was such pleasure to be had from listening to your talent. Real amazing talent in 5 to 6 minute pieces, compressing so much understanding, so much orchestrating skill. You should know, and you can use this as the reason why you didn't win, as 6 of you obviously didn't get that name drawn out of the hat, that I am not a professional musician and never have been, and I've never composed anything. And yet I am a passionate lover of music. So, you know, you can say I wasn't picked, but then the person judging the competition was an ignoramus, and you will be quite right.
Thank you for your comments, Stephen. Do you have a winner for us?
I do, after much painful self-stabbing and wondering and thinking, oh, but if I give it to this one, I can't give it to that one. All that is understood. It's the nature of a competition. So in the end, I think just in terms of memorability and richness and fullness, I'm going to give it to composition number 4.
Well, composition number 4 is Nathen Durasamy. So, congratulations. In another time, we'd all be in the hall together and we'd all be cheering Nathen, but we'll just have to kind of silently or in our own space congratulate him. Well, thank you very much. This has been the Daryl Runswick Composition Prize. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Stephen Fry for adjudicating. Stephen, it's been wonderful to have you here, or have you here in a virtual sense.
It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks to all the composers. Thanks to a fabulous array of players, all student players who've played on it. Thanks to Gwyn Pritchard, who has been the tutor who has led the project. Thanks to Gregory Rose, who's conducted it. Thanks to Kit Venables, Barney Brosnan, let's get his name right. And to Benley Grossart, who have been the technicians on the whole project. And thank you from me, and goodbye.